Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from LEXISNEXIS Family Law, and it's a book which I've used certainly myself in my practice at the Family Bar. It's Child Protection Proceedings with the subtitle Care and Adoption Orders, and it's been written by Simon Johnson and Joanne Porter. It's now in a second edition, which has come out quite quickly. I've actually had a case during the pandemic, so this book has been quite useful to give me an idea of where we are at the moment, because there have been some quite substantial problems with the way we've been doing cases. In other words, a case would have started prior to the pandemic and then it's run through during the pandemic itself. So there have been a lot of challenging things to face. I've given the title of the book review An Essential Guide for Family Practitioners as we prepare for a reopening of courts after COVID-19. And that's really where we are at the moment. Here's the book. It's a paperback. There we go. It's quite a heavy book, this one. There's the spine. You can probably see a little bit on the back. I'm just going to mention a bit of what's on the back in the review to tell you what's actually in the book itself. The house style is very much part of the way which LEXISNEXIS operate. The index is by paragraph numbering. It's quite a detailed index, so it's quite useful right at the back. But it's paragraph numbering, not page numbering. And at the front of the book, we've got the front page. There's a little rider stating that they're not going to be liable for any errors that are in the book, quite rightly too, because we do have problems from time to time. Now, as I said, there are two editions. The first edition came out a little while ago, and with both editions there's a foreword by Mrs. Justice Theis. And the first one was in November 2017, and then she's written a more recent foreword in April 2021, and I'll refer to that a little later. We then have some acknowledgements. We then get to the contents. Now, the contents section is long. It's quite detailed. You should be able to find what you're looking for because there are a substantial number of chapters running all the way through. In fact, the total number of chapters, there are 7 parts, 31 chapters. Then there are 11 appendices. So there's quite a lot there. You can probably see there's quite a lot. Then you've got the table of statutes, then the statutory instruments, then of course you've got some international material as is normal. Then after that you have the table of cases, quite a lot of them running all the way through. Then you get to the body copy of the book, and it is split into parts. So the first part is the background, introduction, background, general principles. And you can see the structure. You've got paragraph numbering at the sides there, so you should be able to find what you're looking for. There are basically I haven't really seen any footnotes as such, so all of the information is in the body copy, and it runs all the way through like that. And then right at the back you have a very substantial appendix. That's Appendix 2. The Children Act is actually at Appendix 1, and it starts, just to get the page number, there's the appendix. It starts on page 517, and in fact the book runs to something like nearly 900 pages actually in total, but as you see the appendix is actually quite a substantial part of the book, as with a number of the publications from the LEXISNEXIS Family Law Stable. So what do I say about the book? Because it's a book that I certainly think is an important one. The new edition of Child Protection Proceedings, Care and Adoption Orders, which comes from Simon Johnson and Joanne Porter, is neatly summed up, I think, as a comprehensive and well-structured book by Mrs. Justice Theis. Now, she goes on to comment that it sets out with commendable clarity the obligations and duties imposed on the local authority to protect and safeguard children, irrespective of whether any legal proceedings have been issued. I think that's very important because it is actually the role of the local authority that we are very concerned with here. What practitioners get with the second edition is an analysis of the issues that arise as any care and or placement application makes its way towards a final hearing, pausing at each stage to provide admirable practical advice, thereby allowing the reader to benefit from the considerable experience of the two authors, Johnson and Porter. I think certainly I found that helpful, because one of the problems with this particular type of application is the amount of time that it can take. It can involve a lot of people. One of the cases I've just been involved in, there were in fact 7 members of council involved in that particular case. Obviously it was High Court, but at the same time it was useful to at least have an idea of the availability of this book. I actually used the previous edition, but it was useful just to get some idea of where we were going with as we move towards the actual final hearing itself. Now, the work, this particular book, has been most usefully updated, adding relevant guidance and changes to practice following the pandemic, really starting from March 2020. We are, quote, sensitively and thoughtfully, as it said, guided through the issues which have arisen from these monumental changes which we've all faced. Now, I think we're particularly fortunate to get a perspective analysis of how the practice and procedure has developed to deal with the unexpected developments. And as I've said, the problem that I've encountered was we started cases which were in court. We all knew each other, fortunately, or most of the people, although people changed. But we then went into Zoom, and the cloud video platform, so things did change, and of course with translators and all the other problems it can start causing quite a few difficulties. There's a quote here I thought was quite helpful. No family practitioner advising in this area, says Theis, will want to face the recent changes to legal provisions and guidance from March 2020 without reference to this invaluable book. And she, of course, is absolutely right. The book's divided into 7 parts. It's mentioned on the back. There are 31 chapters, and there are the 11 appendices covering the legislation and rules. The book here examines the following topics in some detail, depending on what you may be looking for, and that's the background and general principles, child protection measures short of care proceedings, so that's just the start, then the emergency intervention, which obviously is when the catalyst starts and everything kicks in, then care proceedings from issue to final hearing, care proceedings, final hearings and final orders. Remember, we as counsel will almost certainly draft them and then agree them, and then they then go to the judge. Alternatives to the making of a final care order, and that is in fact one of the things that was quite useful for me, because you are looking at other types of perhaps guardianship order or whatever it might be. So that is an alternative, which, because of the draconian nature of the care order, and of course the changing family court structure, which is obviously taking place at the moment. Now, what we have here from the publishers, LEXISNEXIS Family Law, is a standard house style where you've got the detailed index at the back, referring to paragraph numbers rather than the 850 odd pages, and that's the way in which they do it, and it works quite well as long as you know where the paragraph numbering is. And then the extensive text which you've got, and there's a lot of detail here, is supplemented by the updated appendices, which contains the key extracts from the statutory and other material which is being used. And I think that's very useful. I've got the date of publication of the paperback second edition as cited at the 30th of April 2021, and I would think the law will be as stated at around May 2021. Let's just have one last look at the book. As I say, the contents section is very detailed. If you're looking for things, use the contents and the index at the back. The index is not as big as it might be, but it should help you. Just opening the book in the middle, you can see there's quite a lot of information here. We're looking here, contact with children in care, basic principles. That is where the emotion comes in, because the children can be whisked away and you don't know where they are. There are quite a large number of cases, and of course the procedural rules are there, but there are a number of useful cases and dicta from the various judges which are useful, I think, depending on what you're looking at. But it really does depend on every individual case. But a big thank you to LEXISNEXIS Family Law and everybody concerned. This is an important book and I'm delighted to review it. good luck to you with everything that's happening in the next year or so. Bye-bye.